projeleriyle cama hayat veren değerli misafirlerimiz ve geleceği inşa edecek olan sevgili gençler. Her yıl düzenlediğimiz ve geleneksel hale getirdiğimiz T buluşmalarında sizlerle birlikte olmak çok büyük bir mutluluk. Bugün 4.'sünü düzenlediğimiz T buluşmalarında dünyanın en inovatif ve yenilikçi mimarlarından biri Yansong ile birlikteyiz. Bu birliktelikteki amacımız hem çok değerli misafirimizden hem de Türkiye'deki mimarların ve cam sektörünün gücünden hep birlikte ilham almak. Mimarlık, insanlık tarihinin en eski mesleklerinden biri. Hayatımıza anlam katıyor, artık malzemenin sınırlarını da zorluyor. Biz de Şişecam Düzcam olarak camın sınırlarını zorluyoruz. Bugün Avrupa'nın en büyük düz cam üreticisi olarak cam ile mucizeler yaratmak için var gücümüzle çalışıyoruz. Bugün Şişecam Düzcam olarak 10 ülkede 17 üretim tesisimizle Hindistan'dan İtalya'ya, Rusya'dan Mısır'a kadar farklı coğrafyalarda üretim yapıyoruz ve yenilikçi ürünlerimizi tüm dünyaya sunuyoruz. Şeffaflığıyla bizi her ortamda doğal gün ışığıyla buluşturan cama, etkin enerji tasarrufu sağlama, emniyet ve güvenlik ihtiyacımıza çözümler üretme ve gürültüyü kontrol etme özelliği kazandırarak mucizevi ürünler yaratıyoruz. Küresel ısınmaya en etkili çözümlerden biri enerji tasarrufu sağlayan camlar. Bunları üretmekle yetinmiyoruz. Sürdürülebilir gelecek için daha fazla ne yapabiliriz diye bu sorunun cevabını Şişecam Bilim ve Teknoloji Merkezimizde arıyoruz. Bilim ve Teknoloji Merkezimizde yenilikçi ürünlerimizi her geçen gün daha büyük şevk ve heyecanla geliştiriyoruz. Projelerin farklı ihtiyaçlarına çözümler sunan temperlenebilir kaplamalı camlarda hiç durmadan yeni ürünler geliştirdik ve bugün 36 çeşit ürüne ulaşmış durumdayız. Ben de buradan size en yeni ürünümüz temperlenebilir solar lovi cam 6028'in müjdesini vermek istiyorum. Bu ürünümüz gerçekten en yeni teknolojiyle, en gelişmiş teknolojiyle üretilmiş ve çok yüksek seçiciliğe sahip bir ürün. Yine bu sene 2018 yılında bu ürünümüze ilave olarak temperlenebilir solar lovi cam nötral 7037, 5128, 5027, derin mavi 4028 ve yine temperlenebilir boyalı camımızı geliştirdik. Ve daha da genişleyen ürün gamımızla projelerinizin her türlü ihtiyacına çözümler sunuyoruz. Bugün Şişecam Düzcam olarak doğru camın doğru yerde kullanılması bizim için çok önemli. Bunu sağlamak için de proje bazında sizlere deneyimli, güçlü ve uzman ekibimizle cam danışmanlığı ve teknik destek sunuyoruz. Yanınızda olmadığımız zamanlar içinde sizlere 6 dilde 17 mobil uygulama geliştirdik. En hızlı şekilde cam danışmanlığı ve teknik destek verebilmek için. Aslında bu mobil uygulamalarımızla cam seçimi konusunda her an yanı başınızdayız. Camın kalbi olarak nitelendirdiğimiz Tuzla'daki Şişecam Genel Merkezimizde çok güzel bir showroom'umuz var. Bu showroom'umuzda sizi camın büyülü dünyasında yolculuğa çıkarıyoruz. Hepinizi ben bu showroom'a bekliyorum. Özellikle camlarımızın sağladığı faydaları size bu showroom'da deneyimleterek gösteriyoruz ve projeleriniz için en uygun camı hep birlikte seçiyoruz. Hepimiz biliyoruz, projelerin her biri çok özel ve her projenin bir hikayesi var. Ben de şimdi sizlere birkaç referans projemizin yer aldığı filmimizle baş başa bırakmak istiyorum ve ardından sözü çok değerli misafirimize bırakıyorum.
Thank you. Good evening. Where's my slides? Today I'm going to talk about some work we are working on and also introduce you my philosophy behind those projects. The title of my speech is Mad Building Nature. So we are architects. We often build artificial things. And nature, we often think nature is something on the opposite side of artificial things. But I would like to put these two together. What if we are building something artificial but inspired from the nature? So that was the idea. This image shows artificial cities, architecture, and at the same time, the nature. The nature, we often think, it's very different from the man-made world. We often build buildings using technology, and nature is something always been there for millions of years already. But what I think is in the modern cities, nature is missing. And then I want to show you one picture. I did this picture in year 2006. That was a proposal for a Tiananmen Square in Beijing, in China. The Tiananmen Square was a very political space. It's a big square, no trees, no single trees. So my proposal was planting all the trees to cover this plaza and turn this plaza into a forest. This image I call Beijing 2050 because I thought it's very hard to make it happen. Actually, it's not difficult to just planting trees, but what was difficult was turn a political space into a new space which is more natural and human. I think if this space can change, then many architecture concept would change. The space, the urban space, the urban architecture will be more about humanity and the nature. Talking about the nature, I think I have a quite a different understanding because I grew up from traditional buildings in Beijing. And when I go to the West, for example, in Europe, the gardens look very different. That was a French garden. And the picture on the right is a Chinese garden. You can see the difference. Chinese garden is more about the combination. Building and trees and the rock and water, everything has to combine together to create the whole experience. So the architecture is a not stand-alone object. And every natural element has to have a cultural meaning behind it. So for example, one person could write a poem about this tree, and the tree will die. And after the tree die, people will think is this story linked to his life. So the physical world will have a spiritual meaning to the people. Same as a city. When you observe the city, for example, in this two Google map, you see Manhattan, New York, the Central Park. The Central Park is a nature, right? You have trees, you have a beautiful park, but you can see the very hard boundary between this nature and the artificial city, because in the West, people think, okay, we are man-made. We preserve the nature, or we take resource from the nature. But in the East, this is Beijing city. Beijing, you can see there's a lake, there's an island, there's a bridge, there's a mountain in the city center, but they're kind of mixed with artificial things. In fact, all these mountains and the lake, they were already artificial, those landscapes. They were not wild nature. So my concept was in the West and the East, we have a very different understanding about the nature. And the modern cities we're living in right now is more like developed from the Western concept. But how this philosophy that human and nature can coexist could develop into a new concept, that's I think a question. So that's the modern city concept. That was from Le Corbusier talking about modern architecture. They are very functional, and that was a proposal for Paris, but didn't happen. But Le Corbusier says buildings, they're machines for living. But now I don't think it's a good definition for architecture. Architecture should have much more meaning than functional machines, I think. Paris didn't take that proposal, but if you see this image, that's actually two photos combined together. One is Manhattan, New York, another one is a city in China. And we're building many cities, a new city, not only in China, in many developing places. We're building this so-called modern image. We've tried to learn from the modern typology, which is a lot of high-rise buildings, and each one take a site and they try to compete to create taller buildings. But there's nothing to do with nature, and this concept is still continuing in many new development. I find this also a funny picture. The one on the left is actually a landmark building in London. It's called the Shard Building, Shard Tower. The one on the right is a tower from North Korea. It's a hotel. The project stopped so long. Originally, they want to compete with Empire State Building in New York. They want to make a taller building, but unfortunately, the project stopped for so long. But now they completed. It's funny, two buildings look very similar. They all having this very sharp point, pointing the sky. It reminds me the cathedrals, the churches in the old city. In the old traditional towns, Western towns, you have these churches. They're the most landmark buildings. But now I think these two buildings somehow shows they also landmark, but they're showing the capitalism and power. I think that's unfortunately being the destiny for modern architecture like this. This is a very similar project in Paris. Of course, Le Corbusier didn't build his towers, but this tower happened. That's the only high-rise building in central Paris. This is a black building. It's called the Tower Montparnasse. And Paris people call this scarf of Paris. They don't like this building, but somehow they like Eiffel Tower. Right? The Eiffel Tower become landmark. But originally, the Eiffel Tower was built earlier. It was built during an expo to show off they can use the steel as a new material to build this tall structure. And then the competition to use steel to building tall buildings become the main competition. So that's why they built this one. And now they launch the competition to change this one. They say, how can we make this tower more beautiful? So we were part of this competition. That's why we have to think about how to deal with it. One day, that's a picture from Beijing. We have this pollution. So one day I see this everything kind of disappeared in the air. So I was thinking maybe I want to make the tower disappear, the black tower disappear from the Paris. So that was my proposal. I tried to use a glass to use a reflection to make the tower kind of blend into the background. So it's not black anymore. It's all about the surrounding, how the surrounding reflect into the tower. In this case, I decided to make the reflection upside down. So what you see is a floating city upside down, hanging in the sky. And from this angle, you will see Eiffel Tower also reflected into the building, but upside down. And we lost the competition. At the first meeting, they were so excited. But they asked why you make Eiffel Tower upside down. I said you already have one, the real one, and I think you don't want the two same ones. But my true answer was why we are trying to change this building, why we don't like this tall building. Why don't we continuing build this kind of tall buildings in the historical center? This question, if we want to answer this question, we have to go back to Eiffel Tower, because tall structure from that day, from the first day, they already become a memorial. They're showing this strength. They're showing the tall building can be memorial for capitalism and power. So that's why every city they're trying to build taller and taller buildings and to try to compete. I think if we can go back and look at the Eiffel Tower from a new angle, from different angle, which is necessary for us to understand this issue. And that's an image I produced when I was a student. When I was in college. That was in year 1999, maybe 2000. That was the year after 9/11 happened in New York. And everyone, all the designers, they try to propose for the new World Trade Center in New York because the Twin Tower collapsed. That was my proposal. I made this floating building, like a cloud. On top of it, I made a park. And it's a floating. It's horizontal structure, and it's organic. And now, when I look back, I saw the idea for me, for a young student, probably was not a competition, right? Not to build a stronger memorial, not to try to make a new competition. But my idea was to find a freedom in this site. How to achieve this freedom? I think nature was my key. So the sky and the park on top of the structure. after I graduated, I started my office. And that was the first competition we won. 2 towers in Canada, and people called the first tower we won Marilyn Monroe building, because the curvature. I like the name. I think because people rarely call a high-rise building or reference the high-rise building after a woman, because most high-rise buildings look very strong, very serious. So the nature for me was important in this project. I tried to create a balcony, open facade, a lot of transparency. Also, when you put these 2 buildings together, they're like sisters. Right? They are slightly different, and you can kind of create this because they're different, so that the space in between them can be always changing. So 2 towers feels like a dancing together. So that was my thinking. I think in the ancient cities, a lot of structure, a lot of architecture, they were about religion. Modern cities, they were talking about capitalism and power. What about the future? Future, I think we should talk more about human and nature. So I want to use several examples to show what's my understanding about humanity and nature. When I talk about nature, it's not about trees or green, or not even sustainability. I'm talking about emotional nature, like how you feel about the nature. This building was a kindergarten I built in Japan. You can see this is a concept. There's an old house inside a new house. The wood frame is the structure, existing structure from old building. So we build a bigger envelope outside the old structure. Why are we doing that? That was an old building, because the old building, they have a very small building, but it's a home for this family. And the son of the family says, "Oh, I want to demolish this building and build a bigger building for community as a kindergarten." He has a vision. And then his father against it. His father says, "I live here forever. I don't want to change." So that was my solution. I want to keep part of the old building as part of the new building, so the new space will have some memory of the old structure. So in this case, the nature for me means the earth. The earth is what architecture rooted from. It's rooted into the place where the families, the emotion, the memories around the project. That's the ceremony they had in Japan. That was a really moving moment. Every people around the project, they go there. And the kids. So that was very important to me as a designer. I understand architecture cannot stand alone. It has to be part of people's life. That was my building after finish. It looked so different, right? People always say, "Oh, you do different architecture. They look different color, different shape from traditional buildings." But inside this building, you have a part of the old memory. It's actually the new building, the 3rd floor, and from the 2nd floor there's a slide coming down. And this is the entrance for this building. It's like a cave. Right? It brings people, the young kids go into a different space from the reality. So I think it's a very very soft. The building feels like a tent. That's a plan. You can see that's the core of the building is actually where the old building was. That's a wood frame from the old structure. By doing this, of course we save some money, but it's not the most important thing, because for me what's important was to keep some memory. The old building become the part of the new structure, and those wood they're actually not not expensive wood. They're not like really old temples or something. It's just because the memory they have. It's a very normal things, but there are people live around them for a long time. So I decided to keep those. And this is space, the new space, on top of the old sloping roof. Now it's become the third level of the new space. It's a classroom, and that's a corner. Very very low. Only young kids can go there. They have a window to look outside. So that's a. So you don't see trees in that building. This is another project also talking about Earth. It's a very different scale. This is a sports center we're building in China. There is a stadium, there's a swimming pool, there's several big venues in this area. And but you know, in many sports center, they build a big structure, big buildings. But here I try to bury all the building into the landscape. So you only see grass, the green surface, and the lake. All the buildings look like volcanoes, like mountains, but in a very weird way. It doesn't look. It's obviously an artificial structure, but you can experience them as land art. So basically, we turn this urban plaza with many mega buildings into a very natural urban space. You can climb the mountains. You can walk around it. You can climb to the top and look the view around. That's a hotel also on the edge of the park. So from there you can look down to see the whole park. So the stadium also, all the seats are actually hidden behind the green slope. All the functions are hidden inside, but they all have a natural light. They have a natural ventilation. But the facade become a natural space that part of the park that everyone can enjoy. As a model. This is another project. It's a kindergarten, another kindergarten in Beijing, China. Now it's under construction. As you can see, this is very colorful roof. In the middle, it's a traditional house. It's a traditional courtyard house, which we have to. It's a listed building. We have to preserve. So we decided to build this single floor roof around this old building. There were several buildings. Those are red blocks. There were several temporary buildings on the site, and there's a tower also at the corner of the site. And there are several different types within the site. So I thought we cannot build a new building as one object, because there's no space. If we build a tower there, there would be no space for people, so for kids to play. So we decided to build a new building as a connection, in between space. So we take the whole site. We kept the old, we kept the tower, and all the space left become the new building. And of course, in the new building, we also create the courtyard, outdoor space. But that's a single floor, so we can have the roof. This roof wouldn't be visible. It's lower than, because it's a single floor, will be lower than the courtyard house. And kids can go up there to play on the roof. The roof become a new playground. So that's the concept. And from this roof, it's obviously a new space, because this typology wasn't part of the courtyard typology, because courtyard is more about privacy, it's not about sharing. But here we want people to share, to connect to each other. But from this space, you can see the old building. You can see the roof. You can see the trees around it. And we also create this a new courtyard space, which is quite different look from traditional courtyard, but it has the same feelings. This round courtyard, inside you have the staircase. Kids can go up to the roof, and there's trees. So this is a roof, but for me it's a new earth, because the earth normally under our feet, underneath our feet, but here this is floating, is above us. But when you go up there, the sky you're still under the sky. So people can run, can walk on this new surface. So this for me is a new definition for Earth. Well, actually, when we were young, we often play on the roof, the traditional slope roof. For us, those are also part of the Earth. This is another project. I want to talk about this traditional neighborhood. Courtyard house, traditional part of the city. Outside the wall, it look very shiny, but inside, that's actually a public toilet. The courtyard house, they don't have a private toilet. So that was also a public toilet behind. In front of it, you see cars and the so-called public space. So this proposal also part of the Beijing 2050. So I was imagining the future of the city. I can do some bubbles. In this image, you see there's a silver reflective object as a toilet. So I was imagining I can build this a small toilet and plug into the courtyard neighborhood. So they're small, and we can put them anywhere as a new function. And that's the image of the project. We built one after the proposal. We call this the Beijing 2050, but it happened earlier than I expected. It's a toilet. I call it the black hole here. Right? It's not a black, but also you don't see a hole. But the black hole for me means some kind of a spatial atmosphere can drag people into something far from reality. What's reality in this situation was the traditional buildings. Right? So you either copy from traditional buildings, or you can build something so-called modern. But modern actually has also some cultural reference. Modern means you put something from other place, mixed with the tradition. Black hole means like this. It looks so strange. It doesn't belong anywhere. It doesn't seems part of the tradition. It also has no cultural reference from other place. So it looks so alien, and but I think there is a reason for this object and the material as well. So I try to create this bubble that reflecting the surrounding. So the reflection can help the object disappearing into the context. At the same time, the reflection is not a mirror. It doesn't repeat the reality, right? It creates this reflection image, very different, a new image. You see the reflection kind of twisted, but you can feel the sky, the tree, the old building were all there. But at the same time, it kind of disappearing. So that was my goal. Why I didn't repeat the old? Because I read a novel, well, actually a saying from this famous writer talking about the courtyard house. He says the beauty of a courtyard house was the emptiness, the space in the middle. It's not about the appearance of the buildings. So inside this emptiness, you have a trees, you have a people, you have a life, family, and the love. And he says that's the key for this architecture. So architecture is not about the material, it's not about the shape, but it's about the space. So I thought maybe if that's the key, I will keep the space, I will keep the tree, but I will have a freedom to introduce some new member, new element in this relationship to have this new family. So that was my thought. I think by putting, you see this image, the bubble was on the left side. It almost disappeared itself. So it shows the respect to this courtyard, but at the same time, it can have its own look, its own character. But from outside, you can see the difference. It's obviously from a new time. It's not from the tradition. It's another project we're building in northern China. It's in front of the mountain. We're building this conference hall. It's a building reference the mountain landscape. It kind of trying to blend into the horizon. It's kind of very low. The roof horizontally become part of the land. It looked like a small hill, but it's floating. So you can see the mountain around it. The building is artificial hill, but it's a building. And this building looks so, people call it futuristic. For me, I think futuristic means unfamiliar, or you feel it's hard to find in another place. So when we combine these two together, it's the black hole. The black hole means you can drag a space in between the reality and the nature. The nature is it's always been there forever. You have a different understanding about nature. But when you create something, you don't repeat the nature. You create an artificial thing. And this new thing is the new architecture is a very unfamiliar for people. Then there's a space in between for people to imagine things. So, for example, this space is a reference the canyon space. It's like a canyon space in between two mountains, and natural light coming down. But it's built by wood, and it's artificial. It feels very warm. So you will wonder, is this architecture space or is a natural space? And we also built this building, finished this building 2 years ago. It's an opera house in Harbin, also a very cold place in the northern China. There are actually two buildings, and also the river, the wetland landscape around the building. We designed everything together. And so we decided to make this building stand out. It looked like a sculpture, right? It stand out. But at the same time, it's a part of the landscape. So it's a new artificial landscape, basically. The building has a two-part. One is a big opera house, another one is a theater. And these two parts are connected and also create this plaza in the middle. It looked like a hills, like a snow mountains. The plan of the building kind of trees the landscape around it. You see the rivers around the building, they're all like goes curves, very organic shapes. So we make building part of it. And we try to make the facade of the building continuing into the ground. Well, actually, you can walk along this facade onto the building and always walk to the top of the building. So this become a path, literally like you climb a mountain. So you can walk outside the building as an experience. Because opera house normally they close during the day, they open in the night. So during the day, people can also enjoy the building by climbing them. Those gaps are actually ramp, so people can go up and they can walk around the building and they can look at the view around the building. And once they reach the top, there's a space like this amphitheater space, like a circle to frame the sky. So the building is it's about the land. It's a blend into the land. But once people reach the top, they will see the sky. So those two things are very important to me. I think this kind of space can extend your architecture into bigger landscape. Even some landscapers, they're invisible. For example, the sky. You cannot literally reach them, but by doing this, you can frame the sky. And the building on one side is very solid. The other side is very transparent. We have a glass roof. So inside we can we can have a light and glow during the night. And on the ground level, it's also very transparent. There's a wood auditorium in the middle. During the day, it's a lot of natural light coming in from the top, from the side. And because it's very transparent, I want to create this interior space, feels like outside. So you will see the landscape around the building. You will feel you're still inside the beautiful nature. On the two sides, you see the stairs. So people go to different level by walk. And when people walk on the stairs, I want to create this experience that you feel you're already part of the performance, and people can look at each other. It's very formal space. So for people to prepare, they're entering a theater. Inside the theater, I also use a lot of wood. Also, I want to bring in the natural light. So the wood, the organic space, make it feels like instrument. It's like inside some kind of instrument. It's about the sound. It's about the space. That's when musicians, they were doing rehearsals. You can see the natural light coming down. That's during the show. So everything were organic. Of course, they designed for acoustics, but also it's a sculptural shape, give a very natural feeling to the space. That's a lobby for the small theater. The material almost disappear. I use several different materials, but they become all white. I place the light and shadows, which is very important to me. I think the light shows the time, can create different atmosphere. And I try to hide the material to make the space dematerialized. So you can clearly say the artificial light and the natural light. Fake hills. You can tell that's a fake hill. So that's very easy to understand. So you build a building as a hill. In this case, we build some towers in the mountain range. The mountain in front of a lake. And we have to build many development around here. So I decided to build several buildings, and each one, they're like growing out of the mountain, part of the natural mountain, part of the artificial mountain. That was the map, the contour lines of the site. So each building a different shape, different size, different height, because each one have to grow out of this very special place. So we took the contour lines and used them as a part of the building floor. So that's when the building finished. You can see there's several small building, bigger building, different height, different location. They're all artificial, they're all concrete buildings. You can tell those are buildings. But from far away, the definition between nature and artificial was blurred. And the reason being that was, I think build an urban tower here wasn't so good. We shouldn't bring a box here to put a big object here. Actually, it's almost a criminal to do anything here. Right? It's a beautiful nature, but if you have to do something, I want to try that. I want to try, what if the condition for us, for architects, is to provide this much space for people in this beautiful landscape? How to solve it? So that was my answer. I think probably to make your big structure as a nature, as a landscape, could be the solution. So this is section. We build a part of the building on the side of the hill and part of it on top of it. So it's become a new community. It's a one group of buildings. They're all facing the lake, and they are at the same time they kind of rooted into the mountains. Each building has a big terrace, outdoor space. I try to make every floor different as well, so the building doesn't show a very, very clear shape. Each floor feels floating, can move in the wind, feels like. So the overall building doesn't have a very strong appearance. That's one balconies. So a lot of balconies, a lot of outdoor space. I think from here you can see the beautiful view. Maybe some artificial thing is not so bad. Maybe if we can find a way to have a proper dialogue with the nature, it could be a good thing. This is another building, look like a mountain, right? This is actually a model we made for a tall building in Beijing. And that's when the building finished. I built 2 black towers out of glass. They look like a slice of rocks coming out of the ground. That's the image when you look at the building from distance. There is a huge park in front of the site. So that's why I think I should build this tall building not as a boundary of the park, but as a part of the park, as maybe second nature. So I decide maybe the tall building can be the fake hill. Maybe people can tell there's a tall building, but what if it looked like a hill? So from the park, when you look at the building, you feel that's not a boundary of the park, but it's part of the landscape. I think this photo is very interesting. You see this building very different from the surrounding, and that's a modern city I was talking about. Modern city making so many boxes like that. This is a very interesting painting drawn by a Chinese architecture critic. He made this painting and put our building inside the painting. The black tower is there. And it looks so fit. The building can fit into this traditional landscaping context. And this landscaping we call shanshui painting. That's a very key, that's very important in Chinese culture, also the urban and architecture typologies in the past. You can find it, if you look at this image, you see nature and this building. The building looks like a part of the nature because the nature always been there. And this you see the neighbor buildings. The neighbor buildings look like a white wall. I don't like those buildings. That's something I reference from the Central Park, New York. They build the building as a wall of the park too. So they treat the nature as a resource. Right? Who can have a view? Which building is taller? But no building wants to think themselves as a part of the park. So we built these two towers. At the same time, several small buildings at the back, on the other side. So in between these small buildings, there are gardens and the public space. That's a construction photo because all this glass was very, very special glass. We use all the curve to make this organic shape. And you see this vertical fins. They're actually you can see from here is a air tunnel. Is a like a chimney. The cool air will go into this tunnel from the bottom and release on the top to bring the air through the building. And on every floor, they can open windows to get the fresh air from this tunnel. And that's the lobby. That's the bottom. We have water in front of the building and the trees. So that's when you look out from this the lobby of the tower. You see the smaller buildings at the back. The scale is lower, is more intimate. I call this a valley space. So all the smaller buildings feels like a rocks or small villages. There's another mountain, Hollywood, in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles. We're building one mixed-use building here. They built this small house. I think they look very cute on the hill. But we built something like this. We built it's a 5th floor, but we built a hill first and then built a village on top of it. So on top you see 2-floor buildings, and then the middle part is a living wall facade, a lot of green and the sloping profile. So the building feels like a kind of a hill in the city. So it's a 5-floor building, but it feels like a smaller scale than 5th floor. So we try to create this in between nature and big structure. On top of it, we also have trees, and the ground level is floating. The plan is actually a courtyard. We create this courtyard space in the middle, and every family will share their public like living space, dining space around the courtyard. That's image under construction. So it's like a little cute village on top of a artificial hill. We're building in Beverly Hills. And in the future here, we'll create a waterfall. Again, we frame the sky in the courtyard, and you enter underneath the garden, and you will look up. The light will coming down, also the water and the sound of the water. So now I talk about the trees. But this tree is not a real tree. It's the structure of the tree. And this is a building, office building we built in China. You see the plan of the building look like a flower. It's branching out. In the middle is the central atrium. And every part is actually office space. And they're all connected in the center. And they also shared many garden spaces around. So that's the diagram of this building. The ground level almost lifted. It's a floating building. And there's only 6 mega columns to support the building. And those void are for gardens. And outside this structure, we will put the shading device because it's in the southern China, it's very, very strong suns. The ground level is all lifted. We put the water, we put a very natural space on the ground level to provide open space for the city. And you enter this lobby, when the glass are open, the fresh air can go in and go up through the central space. On many levels, you will have gardens around. They're triple height or double height. They're behind the shading devices. So the building like branching out. Those are construction photos. Every part feels like a canopy because the building is a cantilever. It's a canopy creating shading, creating the negative space, the void space for people to enjoy outdoor activities. So the building is not only an envelope to define what's inside, what's outside, but in this case to create many in-between spaces for people to enjoy some semi-indoor, semi-outdoor space. The sky. One image I showed in my student work, the early work, I showed you this tall building floating above the sky. And this one, it's actually has some link to that early work, but this one is a recent project we're building right now. It's a museum in Los Angeles called the Lucas Museum of Narrative Arts. It's actually a museum for George Lucas, the creator for Star Wars movies. So the movie was about the science fiction, and here I think in our world, in our city, the city is very much about facts, the reality. So I think in this case, the museum can be a fantasy. The museum can create this time gap or black hole, in between the fantasy and the reality. So here I think maybe the building can be a cloud that's floating above the site. And I like this image very much. We create this image to show the surrounding. So you see the mountain that's really far away from our site actually, and Los Angeles downtown. You see these tall buildings. Actually, you see them everywhere right now. But somehow I imagine like 100 years ago, you don't have those things. But the mountains were there. The mountains are so powerful, and the city was horizontal. So how we create something very futuristic, but at the same time talk to the landscape. So here I think the horizontal structure was my answer. It's a very long building with a gallery space inside it. Inside is a single floor structure and floating above the site. On the ground level, we can create a lot of a public park and green space under the shade. The middle space underneath the building is a plaza, is an urban plaza, where also you can enter the museum from this plaza. So this elevation, the building once you lift it, you can free up a lot of space on the ground, at the same time create another space, urban or natural space on top of the building. So you can see this building along the street also feels elevated. This is actually it's a cooling tower for mechanical equipment, the waterfall. But it also become a landscaping element. So the building is a cantilever on top of the landscape. And then we create also the nature park on top of the building. That's a plaza underneath. It's a very big arch. This space for me is quite classic, I think. It has a hole on the top to bring down the natural light. And there's a 2 glass lobby on 2 sides, and they kind of have this dialogue to each other, and you're in the middle. It's very central, symmetrical space. It's very classic for me. But at the same time, it's so abstract and futuristic. So now we go back to New York, because my presentation starts from criticizing the modern architecture in New York. Several years ago, we got this opportunity to do a high-rise there. So that was my challenge, how to make a high-rise in New York. You see that small tower, black color? That was my design. It's called a pencil tower. It's a very tiny footprint next to Empire State Building. Empire State Building was a landmark and looked very powerful. But our building looked very weak, very gentle. So barely touch the ground, and the top become transparent and merge into the sky. So I find a lot of buildings in New York, they look very powerful because the skyline, either very sharp or very massive. So I thought maybe I can make a building look very soft at the same time disappearing into the sky. Maybe in that way you can reach the sky, in fact, because you're connected to the sky instead of aiming the height, the physical height. So in this case, the dialogue between our building and the sky become more important. So the building has a smaller footprint at the bottom, and the middle part has a little bit cantilever, and then goes back to smaller footprint on the top, and then the glass material will turn from the black into transparent. So you won't not be able to tell where is the building end. That was my goal. I think this building, I mean, now when we talk about how a tall building become human and natural, we talk about the sustainability. But in fact, in this image, many high-rise buildings around this building, they're LEED building, they're green building, they're sustainable building, but they look no difference from the building in the past. They're still like a machine, right? The space, the quality of architecture. So I was wondering if this whole thing is about, the discussion is about our relationship to the nature, then the energy, of course, is one thing. It's sustainability, technology. They are part of the discussion. But what's the proof that our new architecture is really respect the nature and really respect to show our emotional connection to the nature? I find that in the old image, the traditional cities, traditional gardens, old architecture, you find, people turn this understanding about nature in a very, very emotional way in the architecture. But what's the solution in today's city, in the future architecture? So that was my intention, not showing trees, and I don't talk about the technology and sustainable strategies. Of course, this building can be environmental, sustainable building, but I want to focus here is how this tall building can really create dialogue in between the city and the nature around us. So that was my proposal. And once we have this building in the context, you can see each building has their appearance in this context for a reason. You see the values behind them. So if we say in the future we try to create a city for human and nature, and when we talk about the nature, it can be a good environment in the big cities, in the high-rise. So I think we need new solutions, and we need to do many experiments on this topic. I think that's my last. Thank you very much.